welcome back. Welcome back to the class. This is the last section, last video of the first 1.1 lecture on plant and cell tissues. Um, Here we will learn about the type of the plant cells. There are many types of plant cells, and it depends on how we categorize them. Here I want to show you that there are at least four major types of plant cells, beginning with this one, the meristematic cell. This cell is similar to the animal stem cells. The major function of the cell is to undergo cell division to produce different types of plant cells. We can find this type of plant cell at the tip of the plants, like at the shoot tip or at the root tip, or where the plants will grow. This meristematic cell can divide and can produce all other kinds like parenchyma that we will talk about later, parenchyma and sclerenchyma. The next type of the cells, as I mentioned, parenchyma, these cells composes of thin primary wall. As you can see right here, it's very thin wall. They are alive at maturity and conduct all biochemical activities in the cells. They are present in the leaves to do photosynthesis and phloem loading, and in some of the stem, very soft and young and very active. The third one is parenchyma. This type of cell is still contain only primary cell wall, but the primary cell wall of parenchyma cells are thicker and uneven compared to parenchyma cells. This picture is quite more difficult to see, but later my I or another instructor for the structural part, she will show you how the parenchyma cell is different from parenchyma. Right here, you just need to know that it's unevenly thicker primary cell wall compared to the parenchyma cells. So this one is also alive at their maturity. However, they are not quite biochemically active because these cells lack chloroplast, ER, and Golgi apparatus. Their function is to give support for the tissue that's still growing and stretching. This type of cell is mostly found in young stem or petiole, like inside of the plant, not the outer side. So they cannot do photosynthesis. They cannot transport chemicals, but they give a support. All right. Finally, the sclerenchyma cells. This type of cell is the only type that contain secondary cell wall. Of course, it contains primary cell wall as a requirement for the plant cells. This one contains secondary cell wall, so they are dead at maturity, and after they dead, after they die, they can do their own function. So they function and they dead and they die, they function at maturity. For example, they are present in stone cell as we mentioned earlier during the cell wall part, like in the stone cells or scurry that give you very hard cells to choose to chew on in the pear, in the coconut shell, for example. They support the tree trunk, like the xylem is also very strong. And because the xylem is very strong, it can withstand high pressure for conducting water from the root to the leaves of the plants. All right, here, if you make a cross section of the plants, like you have a knife and cut right in the middle of the plants, and you can see inside, you will see three layers of plant tissue system. The outermost one, the middle, um, and the inner one. The outer one is dermal tissues. This one is more like our skin. It can separate the organism from the environment. For the younger plants, we have epidermis covering the whole plants, but in some plants that go for maturity, it will be it will have periderm to replace the epidermis. The ground tissue are composed of parenchyma, parenchyma, and sclerenchyma tissues. This ground tissue is like a support in the middle of the plants. We will see a sample in the next slides. And finally, the vascular tissues. This vascular tissue provide transportation, like a logistic for the plants to transport either water, mineral, or food. We can divide the vascular system into two parts: xylem tissues. This xylem tissue can be composed of trachea and vessel element as the two types of the cells. Xylem transport water and minerals, and another one is phloem. Phloem tissues transport sugar mainly, um, for from the leaves where the sugar is produced through the rest of the plants where it need sugar. And there are two types of cells in phloem: sip2 element and companion cells. Here is an example of cross-section of corn stem. You've seen this picture before, but I want you to see this again. The outer when you cut the corn stem, the outermost layer is of course epidermis, is the categories of dermal tissues. The middle, everything in between epidermis and vascular tissue right here, is ground tissues. You can see that it has thin wall. It do not stain with red dyes like in this part, in the bundle sheet or in the vascular system. And here you have xylem. You have a very um, thick wall of vessel elements. And here you have phloem. The bigger cell is C2 elements, and the smaller cell, like a square one in between C2 elements, is oh, my brain is freeze, is companion cells. All right, so we have um, three tissue system: dermal, ground, and vascular. If we look at the tip of the plants, the actively growing one, we will find another type of plant tissue system, meristematic tissue. At the tip, we have apical meristem. It will present in the shoot, like this one right here, and in the root at the very end right here. These are apical meristem, either shoot apical meristem or root apical meristem, and each of them will compose of three more subtype of apical meristem. Like similar to this part, we have three part: dermal, ground, and vascular. But for the meristematic cells, we have different names: protoderm for dermal tissues, ground meristem for ground tissues, and procambium for vascular tissues. And apart from the shoot and the root tips, we also have lateral meristem. in the dicotyledonous plants or dicot plants, another type of plants. We have this kind of plants can grow thicker in diameters. They can getting fat, so they need to have another type of meristem to produce new cells, and those type of cells is called lateral meristem. Like um, this one is Vascular cambium. Vascular cambium can produce more xylem and more phloem. And the last one, the outer part, is cork cambium. This one will produce the outer bark layer of the plants. If you think about a cork that cap a wine bottle, the cork is derived from cork cambium. It's a part of the outer bark of the plants. So if you look at this picture, you see the whole plants, and the above ground is the shoot system. The lower part of the ground is the root system. And if you make a cut at each organ of the plant, the leaves, the stem, and the root, you will see three different three different plant tissues, beginning with dermal tissue, epidermis right here, and epidermis at the lower part of the leaves. Same things go for stem epidermis and root epidermis. In the middle, you have ground tissue. For the leaves, you have parasite mesophyll and spongy mesophyll. This is an exception of ground tissue because earlier I said ground tissues is not quite very active. But right here in the leaves, parasite mesophyll and spongy mesophyll, the type of the cell is parenchyma and it's very active. It can do a lot of photosynthesis. For the stem, you have cork and pit are ground tissues. They just give support for the growing plants. For the root, you can also have cortex, endodermis, and pericycle. We will learn more about the structure of the root later in the structural part. And right in the middle of the plant's leaves, stem, and root, you have vascular tissues, you have xylem tissue, you have phloem tissues. And here in this table, we have two parts. This table summarizes the different plant tissue system, tissues, cells, and their characteristic, location, and function. Let's go together. For the tissue system, you have three tissue systems: dermal, ground, and vascular. And for the dermal tissues, you have epidermis and periderm. For the epidermis, it is the unspecialized cells. For example, guard cells, trichomes, the hair, and other kinds of specialized cells. Its location is the outermost layer of cells of the primary plant body. This does mean the young plant. This function is mechanical protection, minimize water loss by having the cuticle as a wax, and aeration of internal tissue via stomata. As I mentioned in some of my video earlier, the plant can breathe through the pore, and the pore is controlled by stomata. For periderm, it's a cork cell like cork cambium cells, parenchyma cells of phylloderm or scurry. Location is initial periderm beneath epidermis, but subsequently periderm is exposed to the outer part because epidermis will um, will eventually disappear. It's replaced epidermis as protective tissues to in the roots and stem, and it gives aeration to internal tissue with another type of structures called lenticels. Again, you will learn about this in the structural part. For the ground tissue system, you have parenchyma, chorenchyma, and sclerenchyma tissues. For parenchyma tissues, the cell type, of course, parenchyma tissues. The shape is commonly polyhedral, many facets, and it contains only the primary cell wall. But throughout the plant body, it's living when it functions. Throughout the plant body as parenchyma tissue in the cortex as the pith and pith ray in xylem and phloem. The metabolic process such as respiration, secretion, photosynthesis, storage, conduction, wound healing, and regeneration. Parenchyma is elongated, unevenly thick primary cell wall, do not have lignin, and living when it functions. And location is on the periphery in the young elongated stem, often as a cylinder or tissue or only in patches in rib or long vein in some leaves, and support the primary plant body. For sclerenchyma tissue, you have two types of the cell type, fiber and sclerine. Fiber is this sclerenchyma always have thick secondary cell wall, both types. Fiber is generally very long, but sclerine is short, and these two are function when they are dead. For fiber, sometimes it's present in cortex and of stem, and most often associated with xylem and phloem in the leaf of monocot plants. Sclerine is present throughout the plants. Fiber provide a support. Sclerine is more like a protective layers, like in the coconut shell. So in the vascular system, you have xylem tissues and phloem tissues. For xylem tissues, you have two types of cell type, trachea and vessel elements. These two are very similar. They are elongated, very long, very tall, and they're dead when they are function. They are both have primary and secondary cell wall with lignin deposited. It contains the pith in the middle, but um, not have a lot of pores. It's located in the xylem tissues, and the main function is to conducting the um, transportation of water. Trachea is mainly found in pine tree, but vessel element is mostly found in flowering plants. For the phloem, you have seed cells and albumina cells. These two are found in gymnosperm or the pine tree. And you have seed element and companion cells. These two are found in angiosperm or flowering plants. If you will make a pair, seed cell and seed tube elements are equivalent together. They are very similar. They are elongated and they have only primary cell wall. They are living at maturity, but um, do not have nucleus. Their function is to act as a pipe, and that pipe can be controlled by component cells or albuminous cells. It's generally elongated, contain primary cell wall. It living at maturity is contain nucleus and is control what substance can be transported into the pipe or sieve tube element or sieve cells. Yes. All right, that is all for conducting for type of cells here. And we will see you again in water relation lecture. Bye.